What is up, my friends, and welcome into the PHLY Phillies podcast and a PHLY Phillies pregame show for you today here on the PHLY Phillies podcast. Tyler Zula and Andrew Frazier with you for the next half an hour or so. This was not expected. We kind of came to this idea a couple days ago because of the 1:10 start today between the Phillies and the Mets as they wrap up the three-game set. We figured a pre-recorded video would not do a couple of things. A, it wouldn't do well in terms of numbers, and that's kind of unfortunately what our business is. It is about numbers. And B, it really wouldn't have a whole lot of shelf life for you to watch because by the time the video was dropped and the game had started, there really wasn't an opportunity for you to watch that video in its entirety. So we figured let's do a live pregame show today. And so welcome to everybody in the chat. Welcome to everybody to the PHLY Phillies pregame show. Phillies look to avoid a sweep at the hands of the New York Mets. Mets take the first two. 5-4 in game one, 5-1 in game two. And the Phillies will send Zack Wheeler to the mound tonight. He'll be opposed by David Peterson. And we'll talk more about the game and we'll talk more about the lineups. A couple of roster moves have been made today, and the lineup is out for the Phillies. Not surprising that Trea Turner is leading off today and Bryson Stott will not play against the lefty David Peterson. We'll talk more about that in just a second. But for those of you that watched the postgame show last night, you are going to hear some of the same things that we talked about last night because I'm still a little bit frustrated with how last night unfolded. I think last night and Tuesday night were two very different games, even though they happened in similar fashions, because at least there was the rally towards the end of the game on Tuesday night that made it a 5-4 game. It wasn't as close as the 5-4 score indicated, but at least there was a little bit of life, a little bit of juice by the Phillies lineup in the ninth inning, especially, Bryson Stott's home run off of Edwin Diaz was at least memorable, and it gives you a little bit of life. And then yesterday, there was no life. Andrew and I used the words lifeless. We used the words listless. And at the same time, you tip your cap to Mets pitching, which has been really excellent all year. They have the best team ERA across baseball, the best starting ERA across all of baseball. Their starters have been really good, and Griffin Canning was good last night. I don't think he was great. I thought he was good. But the Phillies' offense was really nowhere to be found, and they lose 5-1 yesterday. And basically for 17 of 18 innings over the course of the first two games, the Phillies offense has been pretty lifeless. Yesterday, they were 2 for 7 with runners in scoring position, and the only hit that attributed to runs was one from Johan Rojas, who drove in the game's only run for the Phillies. So they were 2 for 7 yesterday. They followed that up with they followed that game with that 2 for 7 with the first game where they were 2 for 5 with runners in scoring position on Tuesday night. But the thing with the runners in scoring position on Tuesday night, both of those hits came in the ninth in that rally. Prior to that, they were 0 for 3. So on top of the fact that they were 0 for with runners in scoring position on Monday night, they only had 3 at-bats with runners in scoring position on Monday night. And I think that in and of itself is kind of telling as to the way that the game unfolded, because they scored 4 runs, but for 8 innings, they were pretty uncompetitive. They had 3 at-bats through 8 innings with runners in scoring position. And they are 4 for 12 now with runners in scoring position, which I guess when you look at it on the surface feels solid enough. It's a .333 average. But really, they were 0 for 3 in the first 8 innings of Monday's game, and they were 2 for 7 throughout yesterday's game. So if you take away the rally, which is not fair to do, but it's part of the conversation, they were really 2 for 10 so far with runners in scoring position. Over 18 innings or 17 innings, they've had 10 at-bats with runners in scoring position. And they're 2 for 10 in those situations. They've really, really struggled to produce in this series. And I think it starts with the guys that are paid to produce. It starts with Trea Turner, Bryce Harper, Kyle Schwarber, Nick Castellanos. They're 2 for 5 hitters in the first 2 games of the series. Yesterday, they were 1 for 14. Turner, Harper, Schwarber, Casti, 1 for 14. And if you include the two walks that they produced, they were 3 for 16 in terms of plate appearances, in terms of getting on base over their plate appearances. That comes a night after they were 1 for 14. So the 2, 3, 4, and 5 hitters over the first 2 games of the series are 2 for 28. You're not going to win any games that way. You simply cannot win games when your 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 hitters are 2 for 28 over the course of 2 games. Now listen, these stretches happen. They're going to happen to the best teams. Aaron Judge is going to falter at some point. Pete Alonso, who's hit the cover off the ball, is going to falter at some point. Like, these things are bound to happen over a small sample size. But when your entire team doesn't hit for 2 games, you can kind of pinpoint a scenario in which your 2, 3, 4, and 5 hitters were 2 for 28. And in total, got on base 8 times in 35 plate appearances. They were 5 for 19 if you include the walks yesterday. They had 4 walks yesterday between the 4 of them, which is great that they're getting on base in that regard, but they're 8 for 35 in total plate appearances between your 2, 3, 4, and 5 hitters over the last 2 games. They've also struck out 11 times over the last 2 nights. That's kind of indicative of how this series has gone so far. There's not been a lot of life from this Phillies offense, and it really stems from their 2, 3, 4, and 5 hitters, because I think Bryson Stott's put the bat on the ball pretty significantly, and he's executed well. 2 hits last night. 2 hits for Alec Boehm last night, who now has a hit in 9 straight games. And Johan Rojas had the only RBI in last night's game. But the rest of the offense was pretty lifeless. Max Kepler draws a walk after a really successful at-bat, I believe in the 7th inning, and JT Realmuto on the next pitch hits into a double play. And that's just one example of how this offense has faltered over the last couple of nights. But it's not just JT hitting into a double play. It's Bryce Harper striking out to end the game against Edwin Diaz on a bad pitch. It's Trea Turner striking out in the at-bat prior. It's all of those numbers that we laid out. And the thing that was concerning over the last 2 nights, with the stats notwithstanding, is the Phillies haven't hit the ball very hard over the last 2 nights. Last night, they had 11 balls that were hit under 88 miles an hour. They were 2 for 11 on those swings. Kyle Schwarber's base hit in the 1st inning, Alec Boehm's base hit in the 2nd inning. They were the only balls that they hit under 88 miles an hour that found a patch of grass, that found a soft spot, that found a spot to fall for a base hit. They were 2 for 11. They had 11 balls that were hit with expected batting averages under 200. Only 2 of those swings were hit harder than 90 miles an hour. So again, expected batting average tells you like what the computer expects for a ball put in play's batting average to be. The Phillies had 11 balls that were hit under expected batting average of 200. They had 1 hit of those 11 balls. It was Alec Boehm's single. So you get the point that I'm trying to make. Like, on top of the fact that they didn't produce yesterday, and they haven't produced in this series with runners in scoring position. They haven't put a lot of runners in scoring position, but they've not produced with runners in scoring position. They're not hitting the ball hard either over the last 2 games. So I think you can put all of these things together to say the offense has been pretty listless over the last 2 games, and it's really kind of been easy to see why. And I'm not going to not give Griffin Canning credit. I thought he burned a lot of pitches over the outer edge to some of the right-handed hitters yesterday, and I give him credit. He pitched well, gave you 5 good innings, but the Phillies just did not put together sustainable contact throughout most of yesterday's game, whether it be against Griffin Canning or Brazaban or Buto in the 9th. Like, whoever pitched throughout yesterday's game really kind of got what they wanted. And then the last thing that I want to talk about over the first 2 games of this series that have really kind of been indicative as to why the Phillies have struggled, whereas the Mets have succeeded and have put 10 runs across over the first 2 games. 5 runs in each of the first 2 games. Last night, the Mets scored all 5 of their runs with 2 outs. Clutch hitting was clearly there for them. We've talked about timely hitting in the past. The Phillies have not had timely hitting over this series. The Mets have. They scored all 5 of their runs last night with 2 outs. Mark Vientos doubled. Pete Alonso doubled. Francisco Lindor singled, Torrens singled. All of those hits came with 2 outs. The Phillies last night were 2 for 11 with 1 walk with 2 outs. They didn't produce with 2 outs. The Mets did. This comes, by the way, a night after the Mets scored 3 of their 5 runs with 2 outs. The Phillies heading into the 9th inning of yesterday, or in Tuesday's game, were 3 for 11 with 2 walks with 2 outs heading into that game. So prior to, if you exclude the 9th inning of the first game, the Phillies are 5 for 22 with 3 walks with 2 outs in these first 2 games of the series. It's pretty easy to see why the Phillies have not been very competitive in this series, with the exception of the 9th inning in Game 1. They're not hitting with 2 outs. They're not hitting with runners in scoring position. They're not hitting the ball overly hard. And their 2 through 5 hitters have not been successful in this series. Listen, these types of series happen. Like, John Kruk kind of, I think, jokingly retorted to Michael Barkan's question about hitting the panic button of, gee, I don't know how they're going to rebound with 130 games left to play. There's still a lot of baseball left to be played. These types of series happen in April, they happen in June, they happen in September. So I'm not overly panicking about the macro, as I've talked about last night, but the micro of this series, there are tangible things to take away that you have real sustainable issues of this 2-game set, of the first 2 games of this set so far. And you saw them against the Cardinals, you saw them against the Braves. The Phillies mashed bad pitching against the Marlins, but they've kind of reverted back to what you saw against the Cardinals and the Braves over those 2 series, which is not a lot of timely hitting. At least the Phillies in those series, I thought were hitting the ball a little bit harder. The Phillies have not hit the ball hard in this series. So there's pretty concise and understanding evidence as to why the Phillies lost the first 2 games of this series. And they look to not get swept tonight when Zack Wheeler takes the mound against David Peterson. Before we get into some of the news and the pitching matchups for tonight, I want to welcome in our second member of the show, and that is Andrew Frazier, who was with us for pre, in-game, and post yesterday. Andrew, you and I talked a lot about these numbers. We talked about Trea Turner specifically, but I added to the fold a little bit more about the runners in scoring position, more about the Phillies' inability to hit with 2 outs last night and the Mets' ability to do that over the last 2 nights. And we kind of lamented yesterday that this one was just a really frustrating, I felt down about last night's game. I still feel down about last night's game. But it's pretty easy to see why the Phillies have struggled over the first 2 games.
Yeah. It all comes down to this lineup and these guys. And the Mets are playing a lot better than the Phillies. Let's just say it, okay?
For sure.
We have to give them the roses, and they have been playing a lot better when it comes to the pitching, when it comes to the fielding, when it comes to hitting. Francisco Lindor has been a Phillies killer in the last 2 games, and it's been tough. When you got guys like Trea Turner, when you got guys like Bryce Harper, Nick Castellanos, who aren't delivering. When all your production's coming out of Bryson Stott, which is really good to see that he is finally getting his swing back and he's finding that contact and making good contact in that first hole. It's good to see. But when you got your 2, 3, 4 guys who aren't really doing anything for you, you're not getting the support. And Aaron Nola, we can all chalk it up to does he throw the meatball? Does he throw the home run ball? Of course, he does. But he's also not getting the runs to help him. He's not getting the support that he needs. And that's just what it is right now. And we were talking about it last night, Tyler. And, it feels like there is something off in this clubhouse with these guys, whether it's mental, whether it's the pressure, whatever it may be. You can really see how evident it is that these guys are struggling with something. Yeah,
the run support's not there for Aaron Nola. Multiple starts where they haven't scored any runs. And I think the thing is, we talked about this yesterday with Aaron Nola specifically. There's only 2 schools of thought, and there's no excuse for the other. So either you talk about Aaron Nola and you say that he's got a 6.4 ERA and he's really struggled through the first 5 starts, which is true, or you say Aaron Nola, I think, has a track record of success over the course of his career, and the run support isn't there. And the reality is, it's probably both. Yeah. It's probably the fact that Aaron Nola has gotten very little run support this year and has also pitched poorly. Right? A 6.4 ERA is bad. There's no question about it. And we talked about it on the pregame show where I thought he pitched pretty well for a majority of the game yesterday and on Monday, and unfortunately was kind of forced back out into the 7th because of what the Phillies bullpen has been over the last couple of weeks. But Aaron Nola has in 5 starts has 10 runs of support. That's 2 runs per game, right? So there are only a handful of pitchers who have less support than Aaron Nola does over the first 5 games. And especially when you talk about guys who have made 4 or 5 starts, because Spencer Strider has only made 1 start. Thomas Harrington has made 1 start. But you're talking about Zach Littell, Kyle Freeland, Nate Eovaldi, Jonathan Cannon, AJ Smith-Shawver, and Shane Smith and Randy Vasquez are the 5 guys who have less run support over 4 or 5 starts than Aaron Nola. Now, most of those guys, Nate Eovaldi for sure, but Smith-Shawver, Jonathan Cannon, Shane Smith, they all have better ERAs than Nola. And so that's the differentiator between those guys, where Nathan Eovaldi's been excellent to begin the year, 2.64 ERA. Shane Smith has been excellent out of in his 4 appearances, 2.82 ERA. So, like, those ERAs are better than what Aaron Nola is providing you. But I also do recognize that the run support is lacking. And so I think the overarching conversation is the Phillies offense, especially in the first 2 games in the series, just has not done enough to get the job done. All right, so let's turn our attention to some news and notes today before we talk about the pitching staff. And the first thing that we're going to talk about is the lineup is out today for the Phillies. And I think, unsurprisingly, even though I wish it wouldn't happen, is that Bryson Stott is not playing today. With David Peterson, the lefty, on the mound, Edmundo Sosa is going to play second. Trea Turner is going to lead off. It's going to go Turner, Harper, Schwarber, Castellanos. JT Realmuto will hit 5th. Alec Boehm moves up to the 6th spot. Edmundo Sosa will hit 7th. And then the other news is the left fielder hitting 8th today is Weston Wilson, who was reinstated off the injured list and will join the 26-man roster. So Weston Wilson gets the start in left field in his first appearance of the year. Cody Clemens has been DFA'd to make room for Wilson. And this one felt like it was kind of a foregone conclusion. Weston Wilson was going to make the team out of camp. There was no doubt about it. He's your power right-handed hitter off the bench, can play a multitude of positions. Probably shouldn't play third, but can play third, can play a little second. Obviously is going to play mostly left field against left-handed pitching to give Max Kepler a spell against lefties. But Cody Clemens is the odd man out, and it felt like he might have been the odd man out when, before camp was going to break, because of the fact that he was out of options. He was a left-handed bat. Weston Wilson was going to take the bulk of the at-bats against left-handed pitching off of the bench. He was going to be your utility guy, if you will. It's unfortunate to see Cody Clemens get DFA'd because I think a lot of people around the city like Cody Clemens. He's a spark plug. He's been a spark plug for the team, last year. And when they needed him to play first, when Bryce Harper had a spell on the IL, he was able to do so. He could play you a couple different positions. He's a likable guy. Had some clutch moments for the Phillies down the stretch last year. But the reality is, he wasn't getting much run even when Weston Wilson wasn't playing. He only had 6 at-bats so far this year. I think he's even almost fallen behind Cal Stevenson at this point in Rob Thompson's pecking order for guys that are going to get at-bats. And then Stevenson comes in late in the game when Rojas exits if it's a righty on the mound and they want a lefty at the plate. So it kind of seemed like Cody Clemens was not long for the Phillies' 26-man roster. And it's unfortunate, but you look at his numbers over 2024, he is a bench player, right? He hit 219 last year. He's a career 197 hitter. Again, he's left-handed. He was out of options, so I just don't think there was a lot of flexibility for him when the Phillies needed a right-handed bat, especially one with a little bit of pop. And to Elephant in the Room's point, I think you're right. I do think Cody Clemens will get claimed. I'm not expecting him to be back with the Phillies AAA team. I'm not expecting him to go back to Lehigh Valley. I would expect him to get claimed, and if he doesn't, I wouldn't be surprised if he tries to test free agency. I don't know what his availability is with testing free agency, so maybe I shouldn't make that claim. I don't know if he has to report to AAA if he doesn't get claimed or not. But I think the Phillies were always going to make this move when Weston Wilson returned because they needed the right-handed power off the bench. Now, Weston Wilson's splits are very, very obvious. He's much better against left-handed pitching than he is against right-handed pitching in his career, or last year, but actually probably closer to his career. Much more extra base hits against righties than he does against lefties. He'll get some starts against the left-handed pitchers in left field with Max Kepler, getting a spell. As I said, he can pinch hit for you down, later in the game. And quite frankly, you may even almost see anytime a lefty comes up late in the game, you may see him pinch hit for Johan Rojas and then send Cal Stevenson out to center field to be the defensive replacement for Weston Wilson. So I think he provides the Phillies some extra flexibility, especially against left-handed pitching, like you're going to see today against David Peterson. So unfortunate to see that Cody Clemens is the odd man out, but I do think he will get claimed, and if he doesn't, we'll see what happens, what his future is with the Phillies if he heads down to AAA Lehigh Valley. All right, final thing that we want to get into today before we get out of here for a 1:10 first pitch for the Phillies and the Mets is the pitching matchup in this one. It's Zack Wheeler taking on David Peterson. Now, Wheeler is 2-1 heading into this game with a 3.73 ERA. He's thrown 31 and a third innings. He struck out 41, and he has a sub-1 whip, as more times than not he does. It's a .989 whip. His last start out, I thought, was his best one, perhaps of the season. 13 strikeouts over 7 innings pitched against the Marlins. And what I liked about Zack Wheeler's start against the Marlins was it was typical. Zack Wheeler is in domination mode. He's in control mode from the start. He is dictating the tempo to you as a hitter. And when Zack Wheeler is at his best, that's what he does. He dictates the tempo of an at-bat. He tells you, I'm going to get ahead. Here's what I'm going to throw. And you're not going to hit it. And you're going to roll over on one. You're going to pop up. You're going to line out. You're going to strike out. And, you know, it was on full display against the Marlins over the 7 innings that he pitched. After what was kind of 2 rough outings against the Braves and the Cardinals, where he gave up 9 earned runs over 11 and a third innings pitched. So I thought that was much more Zack Wheeler-esque. You saw it against the Rockies. You saw it against the Nationals in his first start. And you saw it against the Marlins over the weekend, where he was just in complete domination-type control. And that's the Zack Wheeler that we've kind of come to expect. So now he'll take on the Mets for his 16th time over the course of his career. It is the 4th most starts that he has made against any one team over the course of his career. No surprise that the 3 teams that are ahead of him, ahead of the Mets, are the Braves, the Nationals, and the Marlins. He will officially, after today, have made more starts against the Mets than he made against the Phillies as a member of the Mets. In his 16th start, he made 15 starts against the Mets against the Phillies as a member of the Mets. And kind of surprisingly, he actually only faced the Mets in the regular season 1 time last year. And he actually has only faced them 3 times in the regular season over the last 2 years, which is kind of surprising because in 2021, he faced the Mets 5 times. In 2022, he faced the Mets 4 times. Now, his last start against the Mets did come in Game 1 of the NLDS, where he was excellent. He spun a gem, and if you remember, of course, he exits the game, and the Phillies bullpen kind of implodes. Hoffman doesn't pitch well. Strahm doesn't pitch well. Kerkering doesn't pitch well. Estevez doesn't pitch well, and they end up losing the game 6-2. But he threw 7 strong innings, gave up just 1 hit, walked 4, but struck out 9, and was excellent in that game. And unfortunately, the Phillies ended up losing 6-2, but they were winning the game at the time of his departure. So among the teams that he has faced at least 10 times in his career, including the Phillies, the 4.65 strikeout to walk ratio against the Mets is the 3rd best in his career. He only has better strikeout to walk numbers against the Brewers and the Diamondbacks in that category. The Mets have hit .251 off of him in his career, so a higher than expected batting average, but he's done a really good job over his career against the New York Mets, especially as he's gotten more and more into his career with the Phillies. So this is the guy you want on the mound that is going to stop a skid. I don't know if the offense is going to agree with him. I don't know if the offense is going to comply and kind of get kicked into gear. But this is the guy that you want on the mound when your team faces a 3-game skid and also is staring in the face of a sweep at the hand of a division rival who is ahead of you in the standings early in the year. You want Zack Wheeler on the mound. He is your ultimate stopper. And I would expect Zack Wheeler to pitch well today. Does the offense respond in turn? That I don't know. But I would expect Zack Wheeler to have himself a good day today. And that leads us to the guy that the Phillies are going to face in David Peterson. Peterson has been awesome this year so far. He hasn't thrown a ton of innings, just 22 innings over his 4 starts, a 1.36 whip, but he's 1-1 with a 3.27 ERA. Now, he hasn't pitched more than 6 innings in any of the 4 games that he's faced, but he has been really effective. He has 9 strikeouts in 2 of his 4 starts. And surprise, surprise, David Peterson is another one of the Mets starting pitchers this year that has kept the ball on the ground at a really efficient rate. He's in the 88th percentile of ground ball rate this season so far. Now, I think the book is kind of out on David Peterson. You know what to expect. Lefty that doesn't throw overly hard. He sits 92, 93, but he's 6'6", and he gets down the mound with such effort, with such efficiency, and he's in the 94th percentile of extension rate that, like, the ball feels like it's on top of you by the time he's releasing. He's already 6'6". He has that extension built in by the fact that he is a big starting pitcher. but he also has an incredible extension rate. And as I said, the 94th percentile in extension rate, where by the time that he's letting that ball go, he's so far down the mound that 92, 93 really feels more like, 95, 96, because it's effectively on top of you and it's getting on hitters more and more quickly as he releases the baseball than he would if either A, he wasn't 6'6", or B, didn't have great extension. Sinker and fastball take up about 50% of his pitches thrown so far this year. He also features a slider, a changeup, and a curveball. He has faced far more right-handed hitters than he has left-handed hitters, but he throws that curveball and the changeup almost exclusively to right-handed hitters. The one thing that David Peterson has done really effectively so far this year compared to his last couple of years is that he's thrown way more first-pitch strikes than any season over the course of his career. Now, he has faced the Phillies double-digit times. This will be his 11th appearance against the Phillies in his career. Not all of those are starts, but he will have faced the Phillies for an 11th time. And his 3.35 strikeout to walk ratio is the best amongst any team against the Phillies that he has faced over the course of his career, that he has faced at least 5 times in his career. He's had some success against the Phillies in the past, especially the Phillies' left-handed hitters. So we'll see what happens in today's game as we get you set for first pitch, 1:10 first pitch between Zack Wheeler and David Peterson. Another excellent pitching matchup. All right, Andrew, I'm going to ask you this.
All right.
Zack Wheeler, I have innate confidence in.
Sure.
I expect him to pitch well.
Yeah.
With the numbers that I just gave you about David Peterson, especially over this year and what he's done against the Phillies over the course of his career, does the Phillies offense in turn respond today?
Yeah, we were talking about this on Anthony's show earlier today, and we both, VG and I both said that we felt like the Phillies are going to bounce back today. With having Wheeler on the mound, I think that's going to give them the confidence that they need in order to make something happen. I think they just.
I sense a pause in your voice.
It's hard,
and understandably so.
Because I'm not there 100%. I'm saying that I feel like they're going to win today, but I am still 50-50. I feel like anything could happen. Wheeler could have a great outing, and they could still just not support him in any way possible. And they end up losing 2-1, and that realistically could be the outcome of today. I would really love to see this team bounce back after those 2 performances. I don't want to see them get swept by the Mets so early on. Because that just, that makes that parking lot that's already inside their head a little bit bigger that they have for the Mets.
Yeah, we've talked about it. They've lost 8 of their last 10 against the Mets. I mean, that's a large enough sample size to feel like they've kind of owned you over the last 2 years.
Yeah, they kind of do. So, but I'm going to say it. They're going to win today. I feel good. Wheeler's going to have a great outing. And I think it's going to be 2-1 Phils.
All right, so the Mets will go back to their more lefty-heavy lineup. Obviously, Francisco Lindor at the top of the lineup will hit left-handed. He'll be followed by Juan Soto. Pete Alonso hits third. No surprise there. Brandon Nimmo is back in the lineup playing left field. Mark Vientos will play third in this one. Jesse Winker will be the DH. Tyrone Taylor will play center. Brett Beatty is going to get the start at second today for Luis Angel Acuna. And then Hayden Senger will get the start behind the plate for the Mets. David Peterson is the starter. And as we made mention earlier, for the Phillies, it looks like this. Turner, Harper, Schwarber, Castellanos, Realmuto, Bohm, Sosa playing second today. Weston Wilson gets his first appearance of the 2025 season. Johan Rojas in center. And Zack Wheeler on the mound. That'll just about do it for the PHLY Phillies pregame show here today. Big thank you to everybody in the chat who was along with us for the ride. Kevin, iRock Philly, Elephant in the Room, Ben Ace, Dad Izard, I guess that's a Charizard reference there. Welcome, K-Red, everybody that was in the chat today. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll be back tomorrow with some more. We'll go back to the pre-recorded thing tomorrow, but we'll be live again on Friday. As we get you set we'll break down the Mets series. We get you set for the Cubs series. We'll talk to our counterparts over at CHGO and get you set for a weekend 3-game set at Wrigley Field against the Cubs. So a big thank you once again to Andrew Frazier for producing today's show. We'll be back with you live on Friday at 1 o'clock as we get you set for the Phillies and the Cubs. Enjoy the game today. First pitch just moments away. Zack Wheeler versus David Peterson. We'll talk to you on Friday right here on the PHLY Phillies podcast. See you.
We all silly like the mayor.